Hi, welcome to TKO Economics 101, where we help you knock out any economics or statistical question you may have. Today we have a very special guest with us named Dr. Robert Schiller. He's going to be talking to us about the Case-Shiller Home Price Index. Please help me welcome Dr. Schiller. How are you doing today?
Glad to be here.
So, you're obviously known for the Case-Shiller Home Price Index. Can you tell me what inspired you to create such a thing?
Well, we wanted to create it in response to how we felt the national realtors were sort of evaluating home prices. We felt like they would always present too positive of a picture of the house market, and so we wanted to create a way of looking at home prices in major cities that was sort of more accurate in regards to how much people's homes were worth.
All right, and so what importance does that have for the everyday home buyer?
Well, what we do is we sort of have a baseline value of 100 for a house. And we take that value based on what your house was worth in 2000. So if your house, for example, had a value of, say, 125 today, that means it's worth 25% more than what it was worth in regards to the price in 2000.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So you mentioned earlier realtors. So could you get this information from anywhere else other than your home price index, or?
There are other sites that try and duplicate the same information, but I wouldn't necessarily say that those other sources of information aren't quite as biased, because we don't have any interest other than reporting the value of people's homes. Whereas, I don't mean to bag on realtors, but what they do is they're trying to sell the house for as much as they can sell it for in the moment without really regards to what the value of the house actually is.
Okay, so could you maybe, for us here who don't really know anything about real estate and homes, could you maybe provide us with some factors that would say influence a home's price, and maybe give us 3 or 2 cities that you think stand out nationally that exhibit those factors?
Well, in terms of direct factors that sort of affect a home's price, you know, of course, you have your location. If you're in a major city, you're going to have to pay more for a house that's the same size than one that's in a smaller city. But then, of course, what I like to look at is sort of more of the economic market factors. For example, if you look at our information on our website, around 2007 through 2009, the home index prices across pretty much every city plummeted a lot, from record highs to almost universal record lows. 3 cities I really like to look at are Portland, Atlanta, and Washington, D.C.
May I ask why?
Well, Portland and Washington, D.C., I like to look at those because if you take the R value, when you plot those 2 points of data over time from, say, 2000 to 2016, you get a really strong correlation between those points of data. So you can really sort of look at how prices fluctuated in a really similar way in 2 different cities. In fact, the R value was about 0.87 for that. Whereas with Atlanta, you have a similar example, except the house prices never rose quite as high. They only rose to about 137 on the home price index. And what's interesting about them is they plummeted, and then they plummeted again, like all the way through 2012. There were almost like 2 huge drops in values for homes in Atlanta. In fact, in 2012, in the home price index for Atlanta, values were below 100. So your house would have been worth less in 2012 than what you paid for it in 2000. And it's just sort of interesting to then compare that to 2 relatively similar large cities, Portland and Washington, D.C.
So you've mentioned that you use 2000 as the year where you compare prices to present day. Do you guys go before 2000? Did you guys calculate any values before that?
Yeah, we do have information before that. It goes back to about 1987. That's just right when we started sort of getting this information. But on any index like this, you really need a point where you sort of have, okay, this is our baseline value. And since 2000 is, the turn of the century, turn of the millennium, we just figured that was a really good baseline. So for example, like you have numbers that are less than 100 predating 2000, but you just really need a starting point for your index.
Okay. And you kind of mentioned economic factors in determining a house. Out of the three cities that you mentioned, Portland, Atlanta, and Washington, D.C., which one do you think has the strongest home price index, market value of homes?
Definitely Washington, D.C.
And why do you believe so?
Well, I mean, if you just look at the numbers themselves, they're much higher than they are in Portland or Atlanta.
Right. So would you say that has a lot to do with the amount of, money that area is bringing in, across the entire nation?
I think that can certainly contribute because you have the government base there, which means there's a lot of opportunities for really high-paying jobs.
Right.
And so therefore, people can get away with sort of charging more for houses there because it's sort of a nicer area to live maybe than Atlanta or Portland.
Right. All right. Is there anything else that you feel that people should know about the Case-Shiller Home Price Index?
Well, I just want people to go into looking at the Case-Shiller Price Index and sort of try and understand that we're not reporting any of this information for any selfish reasons. We're really just trying to help the American public and consumers and looking at giving them some sort of metric to see, wow, this house that I've been living in for 20 years, is it worth more now? Should I sell it? Should I buy? We're just really trying to help the general American consumer so that they don't end up being underwater on their mortgage.
Right. And, we have a lot of students who watch our show because, we try to help students out in their statistics classes or economics classes or, even students want to become real estate agents at some point in their lives. How would you say this benefits them career-wise?
You mean learning about the Shiller Price
Yeah,
Index?
what I'm trying to ask is, would it set them apart from, let's say, competition in the job market or, in a classroom if they knew about this before entering a class?
I think knowing about the Shiller Price Index is sort of a helpful tool, especially in real estate. But if you can sort of evaluate that information as well, using the Shiller Price Index is a really good sort of group of information to analyze data.
Right. And what would you say is the easiest way to analyze your price indexes?
Well, what I like to do is I like to maybe set two cities competing against each other. Like, for example, when I mentioned Atlanta and Washington, D.C., just sort of what you do is you can run a test on them to sort of determine if that data is correlated or not, to see if that data is moving up and down with each other or if there's no connection with the data at all.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much for for answering all these difficult questions that we had for you, and we look forward to having you again on the show.
Yeah, thanks for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Of course. And that, folks, there is the Case-Shiller Home Price Index for you. We hope that you have a wonderful day and good luck on your next stats or economics test. Thank you.